Hello there, guys, and welcome back to my channel for yet another Chelsea preview live stream where we're going to talk about, obviously, the upcoming game tomorrow, Chelsea against Burnley. We're going to do a predicted 11, but we're also going to talk about a few individual, subjects, topics, whatever you want to call it. We're going to talk about Kai Havertz, about his form. Is he playing badly? Is he playing well? Are fans misjudging him? What actually is the situation? Because, if you've been on Twitter, you know that some people are going in on him hard and then the other people are defending him hard. It's very similar to the whole Callum Hudson-Odoi situation or Pulisic situation when he is fit. Also, is Christian Pulisic fit to start? Because he was called up to the US men's national team. So is he fit to start? And a couple of things that we'll get into. What do our wingbacks actually do? And also how Chelsea fans on Twitter have managed to get into an argument between Hudson-Odoi and Jorginho. Not quite sure how anyone manages that, to get into an argument about these two people. It wasn't loads of people, but I saw a few people and I was just baffled. So we'll talk about that and we'll talk about many other things. As you can see, I am joined by two very, very special guests. I can't say my two favorite Americans because Cheyenne will be disappointed, but two of my favorite Americans. The trash talking Texan, Mr. Jester. First of all, Jester, thank you for joining us as always. How you doing, firstly, and how you feeling ahead of tomorrow's game? Confident?
Yeah, I'm doing brilliant. Yeah, I'm confident. Last year it was okay. We're playing a smaller team. Are we gonna be Charity FC? I don't see that with Tuchel, so I'm really confident that we're gonna go in and at least a 3-0. So at least, depending on how early we get our first goal. They do have one area of concern with Maxwell Cornet. I think he is, class. He's probably the most dangerous attacker they have. But other than that, they don't have anything for us. And I think we should boss the game from start to finish.
You'd like to think so. You definitely like to think so. But Clutch, of course, we're also joined by the man himself. Thank you for joining us, as always. Same question as for Jester. How are you? And are you confident ahead of tomorrow, mate?
I'm fantastic, except we're about to go into an international break, and I hate that every time. But always a pleasure, Laurenz. I would pretty much agree with everything Jester said. I mean, we should be comfortably beating Burnley, even though they've been in decent form. They haven't got an away win for a while, so I do think anytime you go against Chelsea, we should just destroy most teams they're still in the bottom three, but they're still defending pretty well for the most part. But pretty confident. I would agree to everything Jester said.
Fair play. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't come here from Twitter, Lewis will also be joining us in a little bit. Not exactly sure when, but soon. So that will be happening. But let's just get straight into the conversation. Why don't we actually start by the topic that you brought up, Jester, just before we went live and were off air? Because there was a comment that Thomas Tuchel recently made. I think it was either before the Malmo game or it was after the Newcastle game. Either one of those two. And he was essentially asked about, the stat that's going around everywhere. It's like, our defenders score so many goals than our midfielders and forwards. And Thomas Tuchel basically said, well, wingbacks aren't really defenders. Which there's quite a big hint here. That's why it's called a 3-4, not a 5-2. That's why we start with 3 centre-backs, 3 defenders, and the other ones. I know they're called wingbacks because, they are wingbacks, number 1. Number 2, they're filled by 2 defenders in our case. I guess on Conte with Moses, it wasn't even filled with a defender. But it's just weird to call them a right mid and then a right wing. Then you're just talking FIFA, like the game terms, and then everything just gets confusing. But essentially, they are not defenders, which is, again, why when I come back to it, I never understood why people were like, Hudson-Odoi can never play wingback. I'm like, yeah, it's not his best position for sure. But surely it's better for him to play there than not at all, right? So, he had good games there. The one I always think of is when we won 4-0, 4-1 away at Palace. A brilliant game from him at wingback. Was there as many brilliant games there as I would have liked? Maybe not, but, decent enough and not as bad as people sometimes made it out to be like, he can never play there again and stuff. But the biggest topic of concern for that is when we don't play Chilwell and Reece James, we're playing much less of a midfielder. We're playing much more, on the one side, just someone that's not very good at football, and on the other side, a defender. So, that's when it becomes more of a topic. But Jester, because you brought it up, why don't you why don't you start, I guess, the conversation in more detail about what exactly you mean and what exactly, you want to touch on before we put it to Clutch as well.
Yeah. Well, this topic actually came up for me the first time before Juventus. If you remember in Juventus, Reece James was hurt. And we were debating whether it was Callum going to be a wing back, if it was going to be Aspie. And I said, why not play Mount there? Because he's very good at crossing. He's very good at defensive. They were like, you can't play Mount there. He didn't play wing back. I said, our wing backs are not wing backs, as in a traditional sense. They're midfielders. If you call them a right mid, if you said they were left and right mid, nobody would have a problem with it. Because he could play there in a 4-4-2, right? You could see Mount playing there in a 4-4-2, left or right mid. I think he's actually done that for England at some point.
I mean, I don't know that, but what I will say, I mean, it would just be a similar situation like with Callum. You'd say it's not his best position, but he can do it.
Yeah, and I thought that he actually would be better than Callum because I think he crosses a lot better, more accurate crosses. He's better defensively. And so that was the discussion that started, and everybody's like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. And then so when Tuchel came out and said, my wing backs are not defenders, they're midfielders, I was like, sounds familiar. I think I've heard that someplace before. And that's why Callum is very good, can be very good in that position, because he doesn't have the defensive responsibilities that everybody thinks he does. Yes, he does need to track back and track runners, just like a winger would, actually.
Exactly, like when we had the days of Willian and Pedro, we was always talking about how Willian and Pedro always track back because Hazard never did. So one of the wingers has to. Every winger has to. Okay, not in our shape. Our like actual wingers don't track back because we have wing backs. But if we didn't have wing backs, if we change back to a 4-back, they would have to do that again.
Right, and then you go to the Malmo game and the assist. That looked an awful lot like a right forward laying the ball off to a wing back who drove past the defender and put it across to the left-sided forward. So that was almost a wing back type run that Cho made, playing off a right forward, even though he was playing the right forward position. He was just dropped a little bit deeper at that point. So these are the type of things. And if you're looking going forward to this game with the way we've been tucking in our wing backs even more, they've got the option going wide or coming inside. To have somebody that's good at crossing, and Callum is a better crosser of the ball than from the right side than Ziyech is, or Christian Pulisic, and Mount's not able to start, and so I think that link up between him and James on that side would be fire because one could go wide, one could come inside. They could play off each other because Callum's better with his right foot than he is his left foot. So
for sure, I mean that's without a shadow of a doubt. He's better on his right foot than he is on his left foot. I want to touch on a couple of things that you mentioned there before I put it to Clutch to see what he thinks as well. I mean, since we play the inside wing backs at times, like you mentioned, sometimes they stay out wide, sometimes they come inside and switch with the kind of the wide number 10s. The only reason why I wouldn't be the biggest fan of Mason there is because he's so important to our press, and the wing backs are less important to our press than the central players, which is why I'd always prefer to have him in the middle than out wide for mainly that reason. Because all the other explanations in terms of on-ball stuff, I'm sure he would do a great job there, and certainly much better than a left wing where Lampard played him. On Hudson-Odoi on that moment against Malmo, the problem that our wing backs sometimes have, or a wing back like Callum has, is that in most games we never get into situations like for the goal against Malmo when we hit their defenders like barely into their own half and then have like 30 yards to sprint into. How often does that happen for us? Like tomorrow against Burnley, I'm not going to say guarantee because, there's always a chance, but likelihood of that happening is very, very slim. They will always have their block pretty close, if not in their box. And then you don't really have any gap to use this, which is when the problem comes in. And when that's the games where I'm not the biggest fan of him at wing back, when he doesn't have space, because then I'm like, okay, you give him the ball, basically ask him to do something from standing, but he's instead of 30 yards from goal, like when he plays on the wing, he's now 50 yards from goal because he's at wing back and on the halfway line, which then makes it more difficult to use his strengths, I guess, which is what I always give people. Okay, yeah, that's more difficult for him. I get that. But what are we going to do? Most teams are going to defend like that against us. I'll let you, react to that in a second, Jester, if you have any reaction to what I just said. But Clutch, what did you make of, first of all, what Jester said in terms of number one, why not? Mount at right wing back, right mid, whatever you want to call it. Is that something? Obviously, we're only talking like in emergency situations. Our starting right wing back is without a shadow of a doubt Reece James, and that's not going to be should we start Mason Mount over him? That's also not what Jester meant. But in general, just more on the wing backs, like why don't people understand that they're midfielders? Like why do people think of them as pure defenders?
First, I agree pretty much with everything Jester said. Now, I also agree with you that Mount is probably going to be better in the middle of the park rather than on the wing. But it's not like he can't play there. I think you said that last stream when somebody was talking about it, and you said something along the lines of it's not like he can't play there. He would be able to play there, but that's not where his main strengths are. I think people get caught up in the term right and left wing back because back is just a term for a defender. Do they have to do defensive work? Sure, yeah, sometimes they do. But like Jester said, wingers have to do that as well. People have to track back. Now, I keep saying this on stream and keep getting crap for it, is where I say I do think Callum is better on the right because it takes his strengths into effect. His strengths are crossing, his strengths are passing, whereas he's not a goal scorer. That's just not who he is. He's a great dribbler, sure, but if you're not going to be able to do anything in the middle and take a shot, there's no point of you to be on that side. I'd rather you try to create for somebody on where you actually have a right foot and are able to do that. Now,
who are we talking about?
Callum.
I'm so not surprised. Let's get into it.
Oh, no.
See, but Lewis, I was thinking about this. I was trying to get this whole Cho topic out of the way before you got here. And then once we had 4 people, we'll talk about other things.
But
no chance, bro. Jesters, by the way, pick up the camera. That looks fresh.
It does.
You like that? I'm in my new office.
I don't know if it's the new camera or the setup, but that's looking crisp. But big up yourself. And big up everyone else locked in, as always.
Big up, Lewis, for joining, obviously, as always. Clutch, did you want to finish your point or was you done?
I'm done.
Fair dues. Just quickly, before we move on, and before I quickly put it to Lewis as well, just thought, Jester, maybe you want to, give an explanation to this question in the chat by Moyo, who said, got mad respect, Jester, but didn't you say you didn't like Callum or you didn't think Callum was a good right wing back? Why are you now advocating for him playing there?
First of all, I said that he could. This is the stuff we could see from him, and he could be a good wing back. It's whether if he applies himself at that. I'm not advocating he should play their game in, game out. All I said was this is a type of run that you would like to see from a right wing back. As far as the game that's coming up, I said I'd like him on the right side because I think him being able to cross from that side allows Reece James to drift inside, and those two could interchange and link up together, play 1-2s. And I think it'd be very, very good because Callum does not shoot off his left foot. And if he's on that right side, he'd be more apt to take a shot and not always have to cut inside. He can take it from going to the outside and taking a shot or going to the outside and playing a ball across. Because you'd have Reece James on the inside, so he wouldn't have to go onto his weaker foot to try to get something off. So again, look for the kind of the words I say. They're not always he should play right wing back. If he was playing it correctly, he could play it because it's a right midfielder position. However, I said that Mount would be better at that position just because of his work rate and his prowess in defense. And I also think that, yes, you want him to press, but you could tell him to press and have that right-sided winger drop first, or right-sided forward or cam, however you want to term it, drop. Say, hey, once you're done, you got to drop because Mount's going to stay forward. You can do that. It's about the instruction set given to the player more of where their starting position is.
If I can just quickly, if you do that and just tell them that at that point, you might as well play Mount as the right number 10. And whoever the right number 10 is in this scenario, just play him at wing back in the first place. Because if you're going to tell them that,
what if it's Kai Havertz?
Well, don't do it when Kai Havertz is playing right hand. Don't do that whole thing then, I would suggest, because I don't really want Kai Havertz fully out wide. But Lewis, essentially what got us into this conversation was talking about why people don't seem to understand that our wingbacks just aren't normal defenders. You know, people think they're basically, I don't know, what, you know, Branislav Ivanovic used to do for Chelsea, or what, I don't know, Azpilicueta when he played left back used to do for Chelsea. It's not the same thing what our wingbacks do, is it? But do you think we need to have a different idea, because there's such a drastic drop in quality when it's not James and Chilwell, but it's especially Alonso, but also Aspi on the other side? Do we need to think of a different not idea of playing, that's maybe a bit drastic, but a different solution when we can't play Chile and James? Or is it just we need to basically hope that Alonso and Aspi get better at it, or we find somebody, or I don't know, play Callum right wing back, or wait until we can recall someone, or buy Tino Livramento back? Is there a solution for you?
Well, I'm confused. So what are we saying? Is Hudson-Odoi a valuable option for right wing back?
Well, I guess you could turn that into the question, or you could include that in your answer, I suppose. But my concern, or not concern is the wrong word again, but when we have Reece James and Ben Chilwell, they're so good offensively and they play such a big role in our attacking. When we don't have them two, it's such a drastic drop-off. Look at the Southampton game. We needed to go to penalties. We didn't arguably create enough chances. Same, maybe not the same in terms of chances created, but in terms of how we played against Malmo in midweek, was certainly not as good as, you know, when we played against Newcastle, when we played against Norwich, when we had Reece James and Chilwell. So now I'm thinking, if we don't have those two, well, what do we do about that problem?
I'm not really too sure, to be honest, because with us, it's always a case of, even if we start poorly, eventually we end up creating a hole for ourselves where we can try and get a result. So I get what you're saying, where you can't really replace the offensive abilities that Chilwell and James give you, but Azpilicueta brings you something different in terms of his build-up play and what he can offer defensively as well. He just doesn't really have the end product in the final third that you're necessarily looking for. His deliveries, his assists usually come from deeper areas of the pitch. Alonso as well, he's kind of similar, where he's only really good in these sorts of games, like against your Malmos or against your Burnleys or your Newcastles, where he can have more space in the attacking third and not have to worry about his defensive responsibilities either. But he lacks the dynamism and the physicality that Ben Chilwell offers. So I get what you're saying, and there is definitely a drop-off, but I don't think it's that impactful towards us because it hasn't cost us anything. It's just you see a small dip-off in our attacking play, which, to be honest, is still there anyway because we struggle to create in the attacking third, especially when it is against low blocks. With or without Lukaku, we've been struggling this season. So I get what you're saying in terms of they're our number one wing backs, and we're gonna feel it when they're out. But I don't think it hits that deep for us. I really don't. Like, I think we handle it regardless.
Fair. And just lastly, and you do think that the first choice backup to Reece should be Aspi, or do you think actually should maybe be Callum?
Now, for me, it should be Aspi, because if anything, playing Hudson-Odoi at left wing back and then putting him back at right wing back just showed me how uncomfortable he feels in that position and how much more natural he feels when he's in the wing positions. I'm not even saying playing on the left. I want to see him in the forward positions. I want to see him receive the ball there instead of receiving the ball further up and having to drive forward, because I don't think that's how you get the best out of him. So I think he's an option that you can use while he's there. And I think also Tuchel playing him at right wing back has also helped him with his ball progression as well, because you've seen him when he's at left wing now, he drops a lot deeper to collect the ball and drive forward with it, which I think is what Tuchel wanted to instill in his game a little bit more. But he's just an emergency option for me for right wing back, because that's not his position. He is a winger. We need to stop playing him as a right wing back. We need to stop trying to turn him into that sort of player. I get playing him there so certain attributes in his game can improve, which would help him out in the wing positions. But he is not a wing back. He's a winger, and we need to stop pretending that he is.
No, I just think we're better offensively with the front with probably him there. And I would say I would love to see Saul play the left side
Left
over
wing,
Marcus Alonso.
Left wing back?
Oh, you mean left
wing back? Yeah,
That's a cool.
because if it's more
have to
like a
see that.
midfielder, he's got more offensive and he's faster.
I'd rather see Saul play than Alonso play. So I'm sure Saul could do a better job than Alonso at wing back. You know, it probably can.
Run with it.
See, I agree with what you said, Lewis, that he's not a right wing back, right? But when I asked this question, I was more thinking when everyone's back fit, I don't expect Callum to start anymore, essentially, right? So he won't be starting in that left forward position or right forward position. I just don't think so. Maybe he will, and then obviously the whole debate's pointless because then he's already playing there, so obviously he can't be right wing back now, can he? But let's presume he's not playing. Then we have Aspie and Cho to pick from who to play instead of Reece when we need to rest Reece. Then depending on the opponent, maybe to some extent, but if the opponent is significantly lesser than ourselves, I personally probably pick Cho over Aspie in that situation. Also, just like he's better in the forward position, but he's 20 years old. It's still better to play wing back than not play at all for me. But what I want to make the main conversation before we get into actually talking about Burnley is talking about Kai Havertz a little bit. I told Clutch and Jester before we went live what I was kind of thinking about, because I'm not sure if you heard, Lewis, but I can't remember after which game. I think it was after the Malmo game. Thomas Tuchel spoke in the press conference how after a lot of fans, including myself to some extent, and a lot of other people criticized Kai quite drastically and quite heavily, Tuchel came out in the press conference and said he actually really likes the way Kai has played, not just on the day against Malmo, but recently. You know, there were people, we win 7-0 against Norwich. Kai Havertz has no goal contributions, no goal, no assists. And, you know, he didn't do anything against Norwich. He didn't do anything against Malmo. He just missed the chances. But Tuchel said he's playing well. And like I said, I was also critical of him after the Malmo game, not just for missing the chances, because I think whether Tuchel says this or not, I still don't think Kai Havertz is making the most of his ability, potential, and talent right now. But I'm still curious, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow's game because I will try to look at Kai a little bit differently and pay more attention to other things. And I'll ask you, Lewis, do you think Kai has been playing all right, even if not well, but just not getting goal contributions, or has he actually played bad?
I think the intent's been there from Havertz, but I think his execution's been poor, and I think his physicality hasn't been great either. Like, there was a huge debate about this on my channel after the Malmo game as well, but I didn't think he played well. I thought every time he got the ball, he was either getting bodied or fell down to the ground too easily. But when it came to 1v1s, it was poor. Like, the finishing was poor. I don't really know what people want me to say about it. I still think the quality's there. It's just he's started the season terribly. But against these low blocks, he's just not having any impact. Like, he's just getting surrounded by defenders and he's struggling with it. He struggled in the Newcastle game. In the Norwich game, the only good thing that Norwich had was that they kept Kai Havertz quiet for 90 minutes. And the same thing happened in the Malmo game. Like, let's not sugarcoat it. His form has been poor. Like, I get people defending him because quality player scored the winning goal in the Champions League final. I get it. I completely understand. And we all know his potential as well. But let's not act like he's been playing well because he really hasn't. We're not going to sugarcoat it.
I see that. I see what you're saying. I'll put it to Clutch in a second. Now, the question I guess I have is, or not I have, but the question that I think Tuchel is trying to raise with his comment is like, yes, he doesn't have an impact in terms of actual goal output, but did we play better against Norwich and score 7 goals because it was him instead of Lukaku and we had triple times the movement? And did we, against Newcastle, kind of we struggled for a while, but he won a penalty with a run that Lukaku probably doesn't make. So does he do things that we don't expect from a striker? And it doesn't currently, for a little bit of unfortunate, a little bit of poor form and confidence in front of goal. Does it just stop him from having that official end product that shows up in stats? Or is he is it having no impact, full stop? Clutch, obviously we spoke about, him, we did the player ratings after the Malmo game. But now that you hear that Tuchel said this, does it change the way you view some of the performances? Or is it, to you, you just still think he's not playing well enough?
I think I agree because it's the same thing with Timo, right? When you talk about Timo, he works really hard. His end product may not be there, but he works really hard. He does everything for the team that he needs to do. Kai's doing all of that. He's making the good runs. But it's his finishing that's lacking. And for a team that we're never we're very rarely going to get scored on, but we got to score goals. And the goals that we are scoring are coming from individual moments of brilliance. And we can't keep doing that. We need to, at some point, start our finishing, and we need to get better at finishing. And Kai is, when he's leading the line, that's his main job, is to finish. And it's the 2 chances he had weren't any different than the goals that he scored against Norwich or against City. They're 1-on-1 with the keeper, but he just either shot him right at the keeper or struggled to handle him,
or even
whatever.
just his goal against Malmo when we played them at home was basically the same thing. When he chipped it.
I think it's harsh to criticize him all the time, but at the same time, you have to, because at what point is this going to cost us? Against a good team, him not being able to finish is going to cost us. Either we're going to get a draw or we're going to lose. But we need to start finishing chances. That's just it. And if he's the striker, that's all that's to be said, is he's got to make the most of the chances he gets.
I hear you. But before I react to that, let me just quickly read out the super chat by CFC Florida. Big up yourself, as always. Saying, great panel today. I agree. Right on, Lewis. Kai has been tripping all over the pitch. And that's what I was actually going to get to as well. While I get what you're saying, Clutch, for me at least, my biggest annoyance or disappointment, or whatever you want to call it, with Kai hasn't actually been the finishing. I know, like, he should have scored a few more on a few occasions. But that's kind of less frustrating to me than tripping all over the pitch, or just like not attempt. Like against Malmo, he had a moment where he not make the play on the wing, ran past him, started a bit of a dribble, and started a chance. I'm like, when was the last time I've seen you do this, Kai? Like, you just did it there. Proof, if you didn't know yourself, that you can do it. Why are you never doing that type of thing? Because I know the Bundesliga is different, teams set up differently, and I get all of that. But he showed the capability of being not maybe a Kovacic, Hazard, Pulisic type dribbler, but still a good dribbler, especially considering his height. And he has good pace, but he's not making use of those things. I've also seen him play absolute peaches of balls, whether it's through balls, over the top balls, left foot, right foot. And I'm like, when was the last time I saw Kai Havertz play a beautiful ball? Like, I know because he's playing as the striker, obviously that's much that comes by much more rarely. I get that. But still, even when he drops a bit deeper, I'm like, I don't even see him attempt to look up and look for that type of ball. That's, for me, way more frustrating than him not scoring chances. Because every striker in the world, I've seen Lukaku miss chances. I've seen Ronaldo miss chances. I've seen, like, everyone misses chances every now and again. But what frustrates me more is when they seem to not believe in their own ability. And that's my big frustration with Kai. I'm like, you can do all of these things. Why are you not doing them? Do you see what I mean, Jester?
Yeah, I get that. So there's 2 discussions to have, right? And there's a direct discussion to have about his goal contributions, goals and assists, which are the striker's number 1 duty, is to put the ball in the back of the net. And everybody is correct on slating him over not doing that. Okay, that's a criticism that is due. He should be scoring more. He should be assisting more with his level of talent from the striker position. Okay, so that's fine. Then let's go to the nuance of this discussion. Is what is he doing to help the overall play of the team? And the best thing he did with Norwich, because he was man-marked by the center defender, was to pull him all over the pitch, what caused havoc in that defense, which is terrible anyway. And he did that again with Malmo. When the striker's not in the center of the pitch, in front of the back 3 or the back 2, whatever they're playing, defenders, they go, hey, wait a minute, there's supposed to be a guy there. That's why that's why the false 9 works with Man City. If you have lesser quality defenders, they don't know what to do. Well, Kai is not playing a false 9. That is not what he's playing. He's actually. I love Josh, but
Gosh, you wild lad. Why aren't you chatting this shit on my streams, bro? Bullshit. They got yourself.
And check out Lewis's channel on that note. Like, link is down in the description, obviously. So go on, Jester.
So as playing the striker, actually, as a real number 9, not a false 9, he's moving to the right-hand side, which is how the goal came about against Malmo, the left-hand side. He's all over the pitch. He's just not in the center. So whoever's man marking him has to look for him. Where are you going? And if you're pulling that player out of position, if they're not interchanging on, hey, I'm going to pick that guy up, you pick my guy up, where communication can break down, you leave holes in the defense. And those holes in the defense, we've seen our wingbacks run into. And then they're open to score. Or you have a Ruben come inside and is there waiting on a cross. So the straightforward discussion is, yes, Kai needs to do more in getting goals and assists. The nuanced discussion is he's playing brilliantly because he's actually helping us break down low blocks by his movement off the ball. So that's the discussion to be had. And again, you can say, well, no goals and assists, he sucks. Or you can look into the nuances and go, well, he's doing these things and you don't understand because it's actually allowing us to score more goals because he's moving defenders left and right and they don't know what to do.
I agree. I will say, though, against Malmo in the away game, I didn't think he did that as well as, for example, he did against Newcastle. I know he instead then had the chances to actually score and unfortunately messed them up. But considering how little real chances we had, I know we had a lot of shots, but, some of them were Christensen shooting from distance and, Ruben shooting from distance and putting it just over. Like, yes, there were chances and, better than in some games where we don't have a shot on target at all. I prefer it that way. But still, we weren't pulling them and getting into great areas. I'm like, okay, now we snap. Now we do something. So while I agree, I was still a little bit surprised when Tuchel said it that way after Malmo game because I was like, yeah, I know I try to at least see that a little bit and try not to get super overwhelmed by the fact, he missed 2 sitters, now he must be awful. But I still didn't think the movement was there enough. And just the fact that he falls over sometimes a little bit too quickly. I'm like, well, that's great that you pull a defender, but if you don't fall over, you stop pulling them and they get into position again. So that's why it gets a bit frustrating to me. But big shout out to you, Josh, obviously, for the super chat a second ago. And the same to Cali, what is it? Cali Drox. Cali Drox. Not sure what that stands for, but I appreciate you. Cheers for the donation. Saying Pulisic will get hurt versus Mexico, I fear, pray for his ankles. Yeah, that is the problem. We're going to get into that in a second. But does anyone want to add something to that about Kai Havertz, or shall we swiftly move on and quickly, get the injury news out the way?
I haven't got much on it.
Brilliant. Moving on it is. So Thomas Tuchel has confirmed that we have actually picked up a new injury. And I don't want to sound too mean, so I'm just going to not make a joke. It's Marcos Alonso. He picked up an injury yesterday. It's not too bad. He will be back soon and everything's fine. But yeah, he's out for tomorrow's game. Of course, Lukaku, Timo Werner, and Mateo Kovacic are also all still out injured. But Christian Pulisic is, of course, still back. And the question, I suppose, is on all of our lips. Is he ready to start tomorrow or not? Because he has been called up to the US national team, even though the manager did speak about, we'll see how many minutes he gets. It's all about how he feels. But see, this is where I think managers sometimes go wrong. Don't ask the player how he feels. Not a player that's injury prone. Obviously, Pulisic is not played properly for 2 months. Obviously, he's going to want to play if he feels somewhat fine. But no.
If he doesn't, the US is going to play him anyway. So
exactly that. I mean, hey, we knew that even 2 weeks ago that they're probably going to find a way to start him against Mexico, just because they need him, I guess. But we'll make it a discussion.
Do you guys really need Pulisic like that, though? Because I looked at your table and you guys are comfortable.
It's the Mexico states rivalry is intense, and it doesn't matter if we're bottom and they're top, or it doesn't matter what it is. You always want to beat them; they always want to beat us. It's one of those rivalry games, like Arsenal or Tottenham v Chelsea. You just want to smash them every time. And Christian Pulisic is the best player in the United States as of right now. I don't, everybody can have their opinion, but as of right now, he's our best player.
By our, Jester means America's, by the way.
Yes. Okay. I'm sorry if you didn't pick up on the accent. I'm not English.
No. I meant to clarify. You don't mean Chelsea's best player.
No. As in the United States. Yes, he's the United States men's national team's best player. He's going to play versus Mexico. He's going to start. He's going to play 90 minutes.
Well,
And then guess
fingers
what?
crossed he doesn't have to come off earlier injured.
Again, if you go back and watch the tackle, it was the same tackle that somebody yesterday got a yellow card for. I think it was Romero.
I didn't see the game, but yeah, possibly.
The guy goes down on one knee and sticks his leg out. You're going to get clattered, and anybody gets injured from that. That's not just.
No, of course.
It's one of those things. It's not like a muscle injury or anything else.
But the
we've seen
Mexico-USA game is always known as a very physical game where it's like.
Well, we've seen him get chopped down in Porto. 12 times, I believe, he was fouled. So I'm not really worried about him getting injured if he will just not run into a crowd of traffic like he did this last time. In open space, I don't, them clipping his ankles, I'm not worried about it. Yeah, they'll be sore. Yeah, he'll have bruises. That goes with the territory.
He should be
that goes with the territory. So no, but he will play 90 minutes against Mexico. He will play 90 minutes against Jamaica.
That's the one that concerns me, I'm like, okay, it's your big rivalry, fair enough, off you go. But against Jamaica, that's why I'm like, no, he doesn't need to play both games. I know he will, but that's where it frustrates me. And I'll put it to you, Clutch. Do you see any chance, just any chance full stop, that Pulisic starts tomorrow? We'll get into the predicted 11 in a second, but just because we're on the topic of Pulisic.
I think it's very possible he starts. Do I think he will? Probably not. But I do think there is a chance. I mean, if he does start, it's probably going to be on that right side, which I really don't want him on that side anyway, so it doesn't really matter. It's not my choice. But I do think they are going to try to give him some minutes because he is going to go to the United States and he is going to play, like you guys said, 2 games of 90 minutes probably. As much as I would rather him not, because, I mean, he just came back. He's played more games for country than he has club, and I really hate that. But personally, I don't think he will start, but I do think there's a possibility.
Fair enough. Lewis, what do you reckon? You think Pulisic starts tomorrow, or is it another cameo appearance and hopefully he gets a bit more than he did against Malmo?
Nah, because the last thing we need is more game time on top of the game time that the US is going to put him through. So I'd rather he don't start this. Keep the same front three from the last game.
See, that's the question in my head. I'm really not sure what's like more important. Is it important to get him ready for playing for the US so he's not as cold and he's a bit sharp and more ready to play 2 games, 90 minutes? Or is it better to not overplay him so he isn't overplayed by the time he's done playing against Jamaica? That's why I'm not sure. But
he only has 1 game a week in the international. He has 1 game the first week and 1 game the second week. So it's not like he's playing three games every 3 or 4 days. It's only 2 games. So I think that you want him to get as much game time because when he comes back, we have a tougher run of fixtures coming up.
Mm.
Yeah, and you want him playing the best he can be. He'll be up to speed and doing bits because we only have one of his type of player. There's nobody else that does what he does. And
which is the problem in itself, I guess.
Yep.
I guess. Again, CFC Florida, appreciate the donation a lot, saying Pulisic should have been off the pitch the first time he went down hard rather than being kept in the game. I mean, like I said, I didn't watch the game at the time. I saw the challenge that injured him in the end. I don't know what happened before that. But yeah, obviously as a Chelsea fan, I completely agree. But at the same, like if I was thinking about an Austria game and I'm like, say, Arnautovic just keeps getting hacked down, I'm like, well, I'd rather he keeps playing because without him, we're god bloody awful. So, like it's one of those where it depends on who you care about. And obviously us being Chelsea fans, we care about that. The US national coach is not a Chelsea fan, so he will obviously prioritize his own job, his own success. So it's just a frustrating one that unfortunately, as much as that sounds bad to say, he is from the US. I don't mean that because, it's a bad country. I mean that because it's jet lag. It's, like a time zones. It's a much, much longer flight. I don't know where do the US just play all over the country usually, or do you have one stadium that you more often than not play in when you play home games?
We've been playing mostly on the East Coast because of the European players, I believe. Less,
I guess, but
it's still 5 hours. By the way, we go on daylight savings time on Sunday, so we'll be back to a 6-hour increment. Just so you
that
do.
explains so much to me.
It's 5 hours right now.
Yeah,
for me.
because I was so confused last week for the F1. Not sure, none of you probably care about this, but the time zones changed between Saturday and Sunday. And I was like, wait, so did you change then? Are you changing now? Did we change? I was so confused. But anyways, quickly before we get into predicted 11, just let's finish off the injury news situation. Mason Mount is back in training after a wisdom tooth infection, which is what kept him out of the Newcastle game and also out of the Malmo game. He is back in training, but there is a good chance he still needs treatment in terms of just getting the wisdom tooth removed, essentially. He has been called up to England, but Thomas Tuchel in the press conference today has said that, well, if it's fine, but chances are he will need to get that removed, and then that will probably happen next week. Now, what I do not understand is why he's in the squad tomorrow. Like, Tuchel literally explained to us, now he lost weight because he basically hasn't been able to eat since Saturday. Well, obviously soup and whatever else, but not like, proper food, what footballers eat, chicken, rice, whatever else they eat, right? Has not really been able to eat that properly. So he's lost weight, he's not at full energy, and he's in pain. Why on earth is that guy in the squad, right? And he can't get the wisdom tooth removed today because if you have an infection, you take antibiotics, and you can only get the surgery done after the antibiotics. But also, what that tells us is that he is currently on antibiotics. Why on earth is he in the squad? I do not understand. I mean, yes, I'm not a doctor, but my mum's a dentist. So I do have a bit of an idea about teeth. So I do not understand why I'm a bit confused by this. But hey, I hope the medical staff and Tuchel will make the right decision with that. And have I forgot anyone? Is there any news? Oh yeah, N'Golo Kante is back as far as we're aware. Obviously didn't travel to Malmo for a similar muscle tightness, fatigue type thing that he missed out on some game 2 weeks ago. So I have no idea whether he will be involved. I have no idea to what extent he will be involved, but I just hope he isn't because it's Burnley, so we don't need it anyway. So why on earth take the risk? But it's also Thomas Tuchel, who very rarely doesn't start Kante when he is anywhere near somewhat available. So we'll see. Let's move on to the predicted 11 because, like I said, I don't have forever today, so we need to get this done. Let me just get this share screen up on screen so we can start. On this very note, I presume we can all agree that Mendy starts and go, right? So I can just, take that out of our mouths and we just go with that. The same arguably goes for Antonio Rudiger at left side of centre-back, obviously. Now this is where we have a bit of a debate. And, let's just do the two centre-backs together, I suppose, because they probably not interline, but they have some sort of relevance to each other, of course. Lewis, let me go with you first. The man that made the nickname Danish Maldini go global, as I tweeted the other day, the zone commentator in Germany about the Champions League game, saying fans have nicknamed him the Danish Maldini. I was like, this is hilarious. But, Lewis, does the Danish Maldini start again? And if so, does he start right centre-back or does he start central centre-back for you?
I'd go right centre-back and I'd start Thiago Silva. Because we're going to need him for his passing in the game anyway, because he ain't going to do that much defensive work. So I'm not that worried about his work rate in the match. So I'd put the same back three as the Newcastle game.
Fair enough. Is there no concern for you that Thiago being 37, playing Newcastle, playing Malmo, playing tomorrow as well? And going obviously to Brazil?
It would be if I was thinking it'd be a high intensity match for the defenders, but I don't think they even have a shot to deal with. So he might as well. He's just going to be passing the ball around for 90 minutes, jogging around a little bit. So I don't expect him to waste too much energy.
Fair dues. I just put that down like this now, and then we can see what the other guys say. It's interesting, actually. I'm not sure if I misheard, and I'm sure some of you have watched the press conference. What I thought I heard Thomas Tuchel say is that Burnley, especially away at City, pressed really high and with really high intensity. I'm like, first time I've heard that about Burnley. So now I'm very intrigued whether they will do that to us too, or whether that's just a City thing. And also,
they could attempt to, but with our team is very press resistant, so I don't think that'll be that much.
No, it doesn't worry me. It just surprises me that Burnley do this. I was unaware that Burnley press against teams like us. I feel like when we play Burnley, we always just run against 2 blocks of 4 and just have to find a way through. And then they just punt long balls to their two strikers.
That's the thing. I wouldn't blame them doing that against us because City can break down a low block. We've struggled with it.
It's true.
We eventually do it. We still get the results and everything, but it doesn't mean that we don't struggle while we're doing it.
Yeah. It's weird because Southampton pressed us in the cup and we couldn't really figure out a way through. But then Norwich kind of did this, which is why Norwich are bottom, where they try to press, but they're not really very good at it. And then they kind of do it half-heartedly, and then they don't really lock up, but they also don't press properly, and that's when you concede 7 goals. But let me go with you, Clutch. What is your order for the central, or not order, but who are your central and right side of central?
I would probably go Christensen center and either Aspie or Chalo as the right center back. I think Thiago Silva's played a lot lately, and I don't know how much, like at his age, I don't know if he could handle it. Keep going.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely understand the concern. I was surprised he played against Malmo, in all honesty, more so than I would be if he started today in a way. But if I forced you to pick one between Aspie and Chalobah, which one would you pick?
Aspie because he's the captain.
Fair dues. Just quickly, by the way, which I haven't mentioned, Trevor Chalobah has yesterday signed a new contract extension. They called it 4.5 years. It's not 4.5 years. It's not 5 years. It's, well, a bit more than 4.5 and a bit less than 5. Essentially until June 2026. But a new contract. Congratulations, Trevor. Well, very well deserved. Very pleased. You got that contract. The only thing I will say is what I'd either pick this. This is my what we have on screen now from what Lewis said. I pick this. If Silva is ready, I'm sure the medical staff and Tuchel will know. So if he starts, he is. If he doesn't, he's not, essentially. And if he isn't, I probably, and I know it sounds silly because Aspie is so good and Aspie's a captain, especially in that right centre-back role. But because of how Burnley play with the long balls, with people good in the air, I would probably pick Chalobah over him just to make us a bit more dominant aerially. But at the same time, Aspie is probably better at nicking second balls because that's, in my opinion, Aspie's biggest strength is the right centre-back. The middle centre-back wins the header, and Aspie gets the second ball before any of their forwards do. So it's a tough one to pick, but this one is the best combination because Christensen is actually also great at nicking that second ball. And Thiago Silva, while not being particularly tall, is so good that he wins most headers anyway. So, Jester, for you, is it those two at the back, or would you change it up from what Lewis said?
No, I don't want to see Aspie in this game because they are set-piece FC. They are going to try to get headers. And Aspie's our shortest center back. Why would you put him in there? Christensen or Chalobah, but I would go with that back three. You could always, if we get ahead, take Silva off and bring Chalobah in if you wanted to. If you wanted to give him a rest, but you get ahead first until you break Burnley's spirit again, because you're talking about a very physical game, and Chalobah's a big guy, but he used to that type of physicality. Because that's what Burnley's going to do. They're going to muck it up and make it physical. We know how Burnley plays, and
it's true.
Keep that in mind when I pick my front three as well. Fair enough. Because physicality is going to be, people who can deal with physicality is going to be the best. To me, it should be the way that Tuchel looks at who should be on the pitch. I don't want, and that's our best physical back line, in my opinion. Up in the air, they can move the ball quickly. We saw how they played when the two wing backs we know are going to play or are going to be playing. It's going to be a beautiful sight to see. I'd just keep that back three, run Thiago Silva out because he's 37 years old. If he farts, he could pull a groin muscle. So play him while you have him.
That is a fair shot. I mean, I'm not 100% sure whether I agree that Silva is one of our three most physical centre-backs, but because he's so good and reads the game so well, for him it matters less. So I still agree with you.
Right, yeah. You understand.
So I'll leave it at that for now. Obviously, if we realise later we want to change it again, we can still do that. To be honest, let's just get the wing-back out of the way. I'm pretty sure there's not going to be any disagreement here. I mean, Alonso is even out injured, so we don't even have that option. And I'm pretty sure we're all going to pick Reece over Aspie. I mean, Reece already got arrested midweek, so he definitely starts today.
Yeah.
A little bit of a question, and I'll actually go with Clutch first, is what we do in midfield. Because Kante is, let's just assume Kante is back, whether he is or not, fair enough. I know, well, to be fair, when I ask Clutch won't start Kante because he wants him to sit out and get fully fit, which I actually agree with. But we still have Ruben Loftus-Cheek, of course, Jorginho, of course, but we also have Saul Niguez. The amount of times either myself or Jester in the chat or Clutch when he was here have said, yeah, why not start Ozil? And he never has. Likelihood he won't, right? So it's just going to be Jorginho and Ruben, isn't it, Clutch?
If you're asking me what I think Tuchel will do, I think Tuchel will play Conte. But if you're asking me what I would do, I'd put Jorginho and Ruben back in the midfield.
I'd agree. Why would you prefer to see Ruben over Conte?
Because I think Conte is just being overplayed. Like, anytime he gets played, then he's going out and he's either got to stay back because we have fitness issues or something. We just need to get that out of the way. I mean, he's going to go to play for France. I know Deschamps said that there's no issue with Conte right now. He's just being rested or whatever. And it's like, well, yeah, because every time he gets played, we either have to, he's a lot like Pulisic in that regard. He's got some sort of muscle fatigue or something happening to him. So I'd rather just see him sit out for a little while. If we need him, we can bring him on. But, I mean, it's Burnley. We're not going to need a player like Conte out there.
I agree. And, I mean, we're talking about physicality. Sure, you could make an argument maybe for Kante instead of Jorginho. But if you want your most physical team, you're not taking Loftus-Cheek out, are you? Jester, is that also the midfield two for you? Midfield two for you? Or would you start Kante?
No, absolutely. That's my midfield. You don't need Conte's defensive prowess in this game, or you shouldn't. Let's put it that way. And you need some offensive presence from the midfield, and Loftus-Cheek, if you're going to pair him with Jorginho, gives you that. Jorginho can just worry about running the game, and Loftus-Cheek can worry about getting forward and interchanging with the three that's going to be on that right side. And, you know, maybe getting a goal this game. I'd love to see him score.
Sure.
And look, he can hold off players while he drives the ball upfield. And if you're talking about physicality, there's nobody more physical in the midfield that we can put out there than Ruben Loftus-Cheek. So he starts.
I agree, man. I just want to quickly, before I put it to Lewis in a second, just quickly want to explain, because I've seen a lot of people, where they, not today so far, but in the past in the chat and also on Twitter, people say, well, if you only play Kante against opponents we need him against, there's too many games he doesn't play. Now, what I will tell you, now in October, November, that might happen. We have a fortunate run of fixtures of games where we are so heavily the favorite that we're not particularly, like, we don't need Kante in those games. But trust me, we will get to a period in the season, February time, March time, when we play Champions League knockouts, when we play some bigger games, when we play an FA Cup round of 16, an FA Cup quarterfinal against a big team. That's when the time in the season comes where you will all of a sudden have 4 or 5 games in a row where we're like, okay, we need Kante. And for those times is when we need to make sure now that he gets over his muscle problems as much as we can. Obviously, there's only so much you can do. If someone has created a tendency to pull muscles, that's unfortunate. But you can still help it a little bit. So giving him as much rest as we can anyhow afford in these periods, like right now where we don't need him, allows us to use him in every game that we do need him when they do come one game after the other when we do need him. That's the explanation that people need to understand. That's why Kante was all of a sudden so great and so important in that, you know, run-in last season when we played in the Champions League and he won man of the match in nearly every Champions League game. Because that's when we had him ready to play all of those big games. If you play him against your Burnleys, your Malmös, your Norwiches, your this, your that, you risk him not being available for those games. Of course, unfortunate things can happen. And hey, he could pick up an injury in training the day before 5 important games. But there's only so much control you have. But you can control no injury during tomorrow's game if you don't play it. That's my logic. But Lewis, would you start Kante or would you go with Jorginho and Loftus-Cheek? I presume you wouldn't go with Saul, would you?
Yeah, I'd go with Jorginho and Loftus-Cheek just based off their form in the last game. They've both been excellent. Ruben took the piss out of that Malmo team, and Jorginho's forward passing was excellent in that game. They look really comfortable next to each other. So, yeah, I'd want both of them to start. Both of them would be perfect for us in this game. It's all about just retaining possession. So it'd be either Jorginho Kovacic or Jorginho Loftus-Cheek. We don't need Kante in this sort of game because we don't need breakup play.
I agree. It's the problem, or not the problem, but what makes this whole predictor 11 at the moment a little bit less interesting, unless we start Barkley and we presume that Pulisic is not going to start, we only really have 3 to start, don't we, Lewis?
Yes.
So it's just going to be Callum Ziyech and Havertz again, or do you think it's going to be anything different?
Nah, I think it's going to be different.
Do you?
I think it'll be Callum Ziyech and Havertz.
No, because again, we go back to physicality. What does Ziyech have a problem with? Playing against physical team.
Although, to be fair, one of his best games he ever had for us was Burnley away. So,
he's done better, but he always does good in Champions League games because there's more space, it's more open, and he has more. He can play more fluid. I don't think he's going to have the space. I think he's going to be closed down. He's going to be ragdolled. For me, the front three has to be Pulisic, the only player we have that can break a low block down by himself. Havertz and Callum. And Pulisic on the left, Callum on the right, so he can link up with James and Loftus-Cheek. You got the academy trifecta over there. And I think that they interchange very well with their skill sets. And having Pulisic there to play with Chilwell and Havertz, if Havertz floats that way, I think they all link up very well with their skill sets together.
So name those three again for me. Who do you think, or who would you have as your front three?
Pulisic on the left, Havertz in the middle, and Chilwell on the right.
Fair enough. Obviously, this is just presuming that Pulisic is fit to start, and if he is, I might go along with that. I can't lie. The question is just, is Pulisic fit to start, which we don't fully know. Even though, yeah, I do really see the logic. I'm sorry, I am a bit baffled by some of these comments by QQ in the chat here. You're a confusing person, you know this. You want to basically rotate the whole team just before we all go on international break. That seems like the silliest thing I've ever heard in my life. Let alone you saying, is anybody else tired of Jorginho? Tired of watching him be brilliant? Maybe yes, just because, you know, he keeps going and going and going, and it just never stops. But your reaction to that, Clutch? I mean, I presume if Pulisic was ready to start, you'd probably go along with that, wouldn't you?
Yes, I would, but I don't think he is. He's played 15 minutes in the past 2 months. Like, there's no way he's fit enough to start a game. I don't you don't get fit for a game by sitting on the sidelines and running. A game is you're only going to get fit for a game and playing in a game, and 15 minutes is not enough to start a game. I'm sorry. It's going to be Callum, Havertz, and Ziyech, but I want the one that Jester has, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Unfortunately, Jester, I do agree with Clutch, especially someone. I know, Jester, you disagree on the whole he is injury prone idea, but I think even whether you agree or not, I'm pretty sure Tuchel agrees with this. So I just can't see him throwing him. I would like it personally if there is no serious concern. But I would at least, if he doesn't start, I want an early sub, 55th, 60th minute. Nothing like wait until the 70th, 75th. I don't need to see that. If he doesn't start, he has to come on, regardless of the score, he has to come on by the latest the hour mark for me. Would you agree, Lewis? Go on, Jester.
You don't think you had those right the first time? Ziyech on the left, Callum on the right?
I mean, I see the question you're putting, because obviously that's the change we made against Malmo in the second half. But I would disagree because of how I expect Burnley to play.
Well, let me play devil's advocate. Mm-hmm. If you have them on the other side, you allow your wingers to stay on the touch line and allow you to bring your wingbacks inside. If you play it that way, Callum and Hakim are both going to cut inside, which means your wingbacks are going to be overlapping again.
Mm-hmm. But now that we have the good wingbacks, is that a problem?
I would rather see Chilwell and James have the option to go wide or cut inside, not always be sent wide. And this way, you know, Callum always favors his right foot and Ziyech favors his left. So for the sake of cohesiveness in the unit, having them flipped, allowing them to play wider and allowing them to play together with the wing backs, playing 1-2s, playing into the wing back and then running off of them would be a lot better than to have them this way, where you're shrinking the area of play by having two wingers that are inverted.
I see what you're saying. I do have my explanation for it, and let me just drag them around to explain what I'm trying to say. For me, even though it worked against Malmo, in general, I don't like having two of the same footed players essentially on the same side. I don't like having two left-footed players on the left and two right-footed players on the right. For why? Simple reason, because it makes you more one-dimensional in your attack. Because then all of your players on the left will prefer to go to their left, and all of your players on the right will prefer to go to their right. Well, if you have them like it is now, either you have them like this, or you can happily switch them. And what that means is the defender doesn't, he knows by the player he's in front of, but he isn't always defending the same way, because defenders have stronger defensive sides and weaker defensive sides. So if you always only have right-footed players there, he knows no matter who I'm coming up against, they're always going to try to go down the line and then cut it back. Obviously, sometimes the player might do something with the weak foot, but the likelihood and the danger of that is significantly dropped. Well, if you have both options, and these guys switch positions quite often, it's much more difficult for a defender to deal with that and just defend it, essentially. And why I think against Malmo we had to do it, like Chester mentioned there, is because it was Alonso and Aspie. Now that we have James and Chile, I don't think we require that, because against Malmo the wingers were the only ones that were going to cross. Because Aspie wasn't high enough up the pitch, and Alonso is just too slow to ever be high enough up the pitch unless he just pretends to be striker again. So then you do need the strong feet on each side to actually play crosses. But when we have those two, I don't think you do need that, because both get forward enough to play these balls anyway. Clearly we just have slightly different opinions, Justin. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just trying to explain how I see it. Lewis, did you listen to hear what we were talking about, and which way round would you prefer it?
Which way? Which one? The front three?
Well, yeah. So Chester basically said he would prefer Ziyech on the left with Chilwell and Hudson-Odoi on the right with Reece. So we have all the right-footed players on that side, and don't have to kind of cluster the space where Burnley are going to have a lot of players, with forcing Hudson-Odoi and Ziyech to cut in on their stronger foot. So that's why we would like them switched round on their, Callum on the right, Ziyech on the left, so they can just stay wide rather than having to occupy the central areas where they sometimes struggle.
No, I understand where he's coming across with that, and you keep everyone on their strong side. They're more comfortable and everything like that. It might be something that Tuchel would want to switch to at halftime. I know he did that in the Malmo game, and it came to great effect. So it could be something that you see turned around for this sort of game too. But I don't know. I feel like we'd start initially with everyone in their most comfortable positions, and then see how everything turns around for the second half.
I see what you're saying. In general, whether you start something like this, Tuchel, whether it's at halftime or 20 minutes into the game or 10 minutes into the game, if he sees actually the way Burnley plays better for us this way, we can make that change, because it's the same personnel. I appreciate the super chat, even though I don't quite appreciate the aggressiveness against my good friend Jester. But Yasin, I appreciate the super chat saying the American guy, presumably meaning Jester, because we do have two American guys. Talking about physicality, but wants to start Pulisic, who just came back from injury, zero objectivity. Jester, do you want to defend yourself?
Yeah, okay. Christian Pulisic probably plays in the most physical national or international league or conference in the entire world. However, you can say that the football is bad in CONCACAF, but the physicality is not. And this guy has gone through all of those games, barely getting injured. He gets injured more at Chelsea than he does with the national team. And they're way more physical over here. Go back and put on the Porto tape. How many times was he kicked and brought down? 12 fouls.
See,
he didn't get injured.
I will say, Jester, you're kind of not the only, but you're one of the few people that think or that say he only gets injured from tackles. Because you're right, on tackles, the likelihood of him getting injured against Burnley is probably slightly less than against Mexico. But in terms of intensity of the game, he's more likely to pull a muscle against Burnley than he is against Mexico. Just because the intensity of the game in the Premier League is going to be higher.
When was the last time he pulled a muscle?
Oh, it's a while back. No, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just trying to...
Yeah.
Because Yassine won't send every message in here, I presume, so that's why I'm like, but go on,
Yeah.
explain. Go on.
Again, he hasn't had a pulled muscle in almost a year. So the injury, so that I think that those issues maybe have been ironed out by the way he's told to run. He's changed the way he's not as explosive sometimes off the ball because they've told him to dial it back a level. Still our most explosive winger from standstill.
For sure.
But again, I say he's physical because he's grown up with that. He's a marked man. You don't understand that if you don't ever watch United States play any game. He's a marked man. They go out to hack him down as many times as they can get away with. And in CONCACAF, if you're not stabbing somebody, you won't get sent off. And I'm telling you, it's that way. You don't understand. I've seen him get punched in the stomach in a game. Yeah, he's been punched in the stomach.
Like fist punched, or like was it an elbow?
No, it was a fist.
That's mental.
And it was not called because it was off the ball and nobody saw it, and they don't have VAR.
Oh, of course they don't.
Because they can't.
Well, but you watch Champions League and they have VAR and they still send Hummels off. So, what do they know with their VAR?
There you go. But so
that's what I found funny. Someone in the chat said, "Nah, fam, Africa is way harder." And then here I see, you should come to Asia. We have the most physical league in the world.
We have the most physical league too.
yeah.
No, exactly that.
You don't understand,
especially when Anthony Taylor is the referee. Then everything's physical because we all want to punch him in the head. But I mean, I can't pretend that I've watched either of these three international federations enough to make a real judgment on this. I've not watched enough African Cup in my life. I've not watched enough USA, Mexico type thing games. And I've definitely not watched enough games in Asia. Like, I can't even pretend I have. So I don't really have an opinion on this. But Clutch, just lastly, before we round it out here, I'm going to bring it back to the discussion we had a second ago in terms of which side everybody should play on. Which side of the coin, I guess, of myself and Jester mostly, but also Lewis, do you sit on? Would you like to have two left-footed on one side and two right-footed on the other side? Or do you like the idea of having, one of each?
I would prefer it the way it is now, but with the caveat of I need Cho to take on more players. 4 dribbles against Malmo it's not enough for his type of player. It's not enough. I don't care. He's got to do more dribbling. He's got to take on players more. And if you're going to be on that left, that's what you got to do. If not, then you're going to go on the right and you're going to be somebody who passes the ball in. You're going to have to be a crosser. But I would prefer it to be this way because Ziyech is better on the right than he is on the left.
This I agree with. I also, good point that you raised there about Callum. Somebody on Twitter was obviously unhappy with myself criticizing Callum Hudson-Odoi, not like super badly, but saying I thought Ziyech was better. Essentially, that's all I said. And people are like, but he had 4 out of 4 completed dribbles, and he had ground duels won. I'm like, he's a forward. The fact that you named me only 4 stats, and one of them was ground duels won, says enough about the situation because If you had other good stats, you wouldn't have chosen to pick that stat for a forward. Plus, while 4 out of 4 dribbles completed is good, 4 dribbles attempted in the first place is not good because I need you to attempt more. If you're, in all honesty, even Havertz and Ziyech, because they're not as good at dribbling, I'm like 4, 5, 6, yeah, fair enough. But not Callum, who's one of his main strengths is dribbling. I'm like, I need more than 4 per game. Just quickly, because I realized this now that I look at it, in terms of what Jester said, it's also very easy to let Ruben go here and kind of create that double right foot on the right side. Not Ziyech drop here, obviously, but then let Ziyech be here and obviously put Ruben there, which naturally happens every now and again in games anyway. I just realized that's a way we put 2 right-footed players on that side without shifting the whole thing around. But I think at that point, we're going to slowly but surely round it out. But we're going to, as always, have to finish it on a score prediction. And Lewis, I know you love a score prediction. So I'll let you go first because I hate myself. But I will go second because recently everyone's always stolen my score predictions and then I had to pick something different. So, Lewis, Chelsea-Burnley, what do you reckon?
3-0 Chelsea. Maybe we don't score until the second half, but eventually we break down these sorts of teams. So I'm confident we'll get a result. Just 3-0 Chelsea, same as a Newcastle game, really.
I back that. I went second, and still my result has been stolen. So I'll go 2-0. But here we are.
All right, we can have the same agreement, bro. It's fine.
All right,
Great
I'll
minds
go
think
3-0
alike.
as well. I go 3-0 as well. I will quickly mention the whole Andrin situation because there seems to be a bit of confusion about that. But Clutch, your score prediction?
4-0. I want to be
4-0.
different and confident.
I love it. Jester, what about yourself?
Well, I'm going to go with the over. I'm going 5-0.
There you go. I love that. There you go. Just quickly, because QQ said here, Andrin back at Chelsea. If it loads up, then I can actually react to it. Hope he recovers. Yeah, so he broke a metatarsal, which is one of the, how many did you have? 7 in each foot? I think it's 7. 7 metatarsals each foot. So he broke one of them, which is an unfortunate injury and an injury that can be not so problematic and can also drag for a while. The only thing that's actually confused me, I don't know why, but I actually thought they bought him, but no, they loaned him out and have an option to buy. And if people don't know, 9 times out of 10, if our loanies get injured at whatever other club that is, they usually come back to us to do recovery. Whether it was Ruben when he was at Palace, he came back to do recovery. Whether it's Andrin, now that he's in Russia, he still comes back to do recovery. Whether it was Charlie Musunda when he was out in the Netherlands, he still comes here to do recovery. Most loanies do and come back to do the recovery with us. Oh, and on that note, Charlie Musunda yesterday or 2 days ago, essentially on his own Twitter, kind of confirmed that he will be a free agent at the end of the season when his Chelsea contract runs out. I know there were some people in the summer.
Damn, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, no. Charlie Musunda, I mean, I'm not going to say, I dislike him personally, but I do find him a very strange character. Like, he was on loan at, Celtic, yeah? And then he was there and played for 2 games. Then they realized he's nowhere near physical enough. He was dropped for the rest of the 6-month loan. And then after 2 months, he started unfollowing every Celtic player and unfollowed. And then all of a sudden, he unfollowed everybody except Eden Hazard, Thorgan Hazard, and Kylian Hazard. And then he unfollowed everyone, and then he followed everyone. And I'm like, mate, you're now 25. Stop.
You remember when he changed his name and he was Musilio Jr.?
Exactly. I'm like, but even at that point, he was like 23. I'm like, bro, you're not 15. Like, at 15, fine, do a joke like that. Or 17, I'll let you off. We're not 23, bro. Right? What are you doing? Maybe he was 21 at the time because the guy's been injured for long. But at the same time, while I criticize that kind of, or not criticize, while I find that kind of social media behavior a bit strange, I still feel bad for him because he was a talent. Yeah, probably wasn't quite enough for Chelsea with his lack of physicality, even though he does look to have bulked up, but, he didn't have anything else to do while not being able to run, so he might as well hit gym, I guess. But he just had a really bad injury. Like, I was essentially out injured for 2 years. I just hope for him because he clearly has invested a lot into his career. So I hope that he gets a chance at some professional club and, can extend his career to longer than 25 years old because, when you invest essentially all of your time for being a young kid to try and make it as a professional footballer, and then you have to stop by 25 without ever having it really made it. That's rough because then you didn't, I don't know, but he might not finish school in terms of, A levels or whatever, or GCSEs, whatever the equivalent in Belgium or whenever he came to England was. He definitely didn't go to university to, help his career in that way. So I really hope for him that he finds a career somewhere, but I'm confused by you, Clutch. You said speedy recovery for Ruben.
It's a joke. It's because he got nutmegged by Pulisic.
I don't scare us like that, man. Fuck
I was
it
like,
out.
no, Clutch, not about Ruben.
No, every time Ruben's on the ground, I still get shook. Come on, bro.
No. Ruben is not hurt, QQ. Just got nutmegged by Pulisic in training.
Do you want to mention Gilmore's loan possibly being terminated?
Oh, yeah. Gilmore's loan might possibly be terminated.
Good.
Do you think he comes back or does he go back on another loan?
I think that he will start playing more by the time we come to January and he will not be called back anyway.
Okay.
Just because Norwich are so bad. Like, they clearly not playing him hasn't worked, so you might as well try it. And then I reckon when they do try, they'll see he's actually pretty decent, and then he won't be out of the team again. That's my hope, at least. But I think in general, we need to wait until like late December because there's 2 months essentially left until we can call him back. in that period, he could play like 10 games. So because there's a lot of games.
Right.
So it's a tough one. It's a tough one. And by the way, before anyone gets scared by Jordan Savage, Rudiger is not out. Everything's fine. So on that awful note, on that awful joke, Mr. Savage, almost like you're Jimmy Savage. But anyway, let's move on. Let's finish this stream. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate every single one of you for tuning in today. Of course, I just remembered again, I need to think of this more again. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't subscribed already, please do subscribe and smash that like button for me. We still have over 140 people watching, which is big up from yourself. So smash that like button. Let's get to at least 100 likes. Doesn't cost you any money, barely cost you any time, and it really helps me out. And of course, like I said, subscribe. We're on the road to 15,000 subscribers. Check out Lewis's channel, which the link is obviously down in the description. Help him get the big 25K, actually. That would be brilliant if we could get that done. And of course, check out both Clutch and Jester over on Twitter. But yeah, as I said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for watching. Up the Chelsea, upwards and onwards. Let's hope we can get the result tomorrow. And I'll see you when I see you.